Hey guys, Cody here at the Wandering Beast channel, and as part of this sort of catch-up series on the adventure van, the next subject I want to talk about is insulation. Insulation, it's winter time, it's one of the first things you should really plan out, and the other thing I'm really thankful for is the way the walls of the bus work. They're mostly straight, big straight sections, so I was able to use solid foam insulation. You'll see from the photos and as I pan around the van, 90% of this is what they call polycyanate. It's that yellowish foam, generally has a silver panel on it, and Home Depot locally is the only one that carries it around here. If I go to Lowe's here in the US, they carry the Armax almost exclusively. Well, Armax is basically a styrofoam. You'll see it's little balls. And when you talk about R rating, you can Google it for a little bit, but R rating is the amount of time it takes for those heat calories to move through that material. And so, you know, it's like a sleeping bag rating, right? Like it's 20-degree bag, but you're the one that's holding that heat in, and it's just trapping your body heat. You are the thermos in a sleeping bag. And, you know, your bus and van conversions are no different. It's the heat you create in here that's going to take longer to be escaped into the atmosphere. It's the reason if you sleep over a tarp or an overhang, you're going to sleep warmer because that body heat is not going to escape. Now, you know, convection is basically the wind blows. When you get out of a pool, you feel that chill of the wind. That's convection sucking all of that out. Well, you obviously shouldn't really have a problem with convection in a van. You know, if it's super windy, you know, heat calories are going to be pulled off of the metal. And that's another thing is conduction. It's not something that I'm not going to say I'm not concerned about it, but you'll see in my build, I did not completely wall off every little piece of metal. I have the L-track that goes on the floor that's tied in directly to the frame. I'm going to use it to bolt things like this chair in. So anywhere where that comes through into the frame, you're going to have conduction. That's like sleeping on the ground without a camping pad, right? That earth is 40 degrees and it is going to suck all of that 98.6 out of your body. Your van is no different. And keep in mind, if it's a lifted van or anything like that and the wind is blowing, you know, that's going to remove heat underneath. And so potentially if you have a skirting system, I know a lot of RV guys who stay in one spot will do that to create that warmth. So one of the things with conduction is, like I said, I have tied in permanently onto these metal rails that you see behind me, and as I pan around, and I'm not going to have much insulation between that and some of the screws and hardwares on the outside. In fact, I have metal trim because I want to be able to use magnets on my ceiling. So I realized going through this process, I'm going to get a lot of comments about conduction. So let's just end that right there. I plan on either having the diesel heater, creating that heat difference in here. I've got a backup diesel that I'm going to be doing hydronically in here, as well as a wood stove potentially. I've already bought the wood stove. It was a great deal. It is a tiny wood stove brand, and if I do have room, it'll go over here behind the driver's seat eventually. It's one of the last pieces that I have to sort of fabricate and figure out in my mind how that's going to work. So hopefully that covers insulation. Now, I talked about the fact that my walls are pretty much straight. The roof is slightly curved, but the square tubing that this bus uses is 1.5 inch. So I basically had 1.5 inches to use. Now locally, again, I could only get a 1 inch and a 1/2 inch of that polycyanate. So you'll see when I move around here, I actually got some pink board. They make it pink and blue, but I was able to find it in 1.5, so I didn't have to fabricate and glue those 1.5 inch together to make a 1.5 inch panel. The pink board was already 1.5, and so that really was easy to utilize around there. And the pink board really is just a little bit less R value than the polycyanate. If the polycyanate's around 6.2 per inch, I think the pink stuff is 5.8. You know, it's not a huge difference. Where then if you jump down to that Armax, that styrofoam, you're talking 3. It's almost half the R value. So it's not going to give you the same insulation value holding that heat in. Now with that, when you're building your house, right, your van, it's the ceiling. It's that attic space that's going to be holding all that heat in from escaping to the atmosphere. So remember that. So I've got not only 1.5 up there, but I also have some other foam on the back side of my ceiling panels. And then as well as I'm using Hardy board, which is a little bit thicker, denser board. It's a little bit stronger in my wall paneling. I did sacrifice a little bit of weight for that, but you're gonna utilize that. Now, if you've got nice curves and you want soft insulation, there's a couple good ones. Stay away from fiberglass. There's gonna be a lot of videos on YouTube that really go into what not to use and what to use. I'm just telling you what I've used and what I found in my research. Don't use house fiberglass. It'll absorb moisture from what I've been told. There's some other jean material. That blue looks like ripped up jeans. That seems to do pretty good, although I have a feeling because as jeans get wet, they hold moisture. It's not supposedly, shouldn't be able to mold, but I don't think I'm going to use that either. Honestly, probably the best one for soft insulation is going to be like a batten wool. Havoc wool, they're actually a big proponent for a lot of van lifers. They are out of Nevada, and I'll put a link down below. It's either Havoc or Havelock. But I'm considering that. So I've got a lot of curves up here in the nose of the bus and as well as the side panels. So more than likely I'll get one bag that will fill my needs for all the nooks and crannies. So the other thing you're gonna see, what I use to secure these panels in, these large panels of solid rigid foam, is of course, Expandifoam. If you guys remember from the beginning of me tearing this fan apart, in fact there's still some up in the nose, I hated Expandifoam. It is the worst thing to try to deal with. However, in hindsight, I probably would have either done it myself or paid somebody to respray this. Now, the reason I didn't like their job is it's very inconsistent. Some is super thick, some has none at all, some is really thick. They just did a horrible job. Now, Expandifoam is a great way of just tying everything in. It's sprayed on everything, it locks into corners, it really makes the structure rigid. I was pretty sufficient and happy with the fact that I've got so much metal reinforcement in here that I'm pretty sure my structure is. However, any of the metal flapping probably could have helped from having some of that done. But the biggest thing is I put it in is Expandifoam. Now, you're gonna go broke trying to buy all those little spray cans. If you're not ready to use that whole can, you guys have ever used spray foam, you know that the straws seal up and they're useless. You end up only using half the can. There are several companies out there. I did play around with the Loctite, the white stuff. It's a polyethylene polystyrene mix. A little bit smaller bubbles. You want closed cell foam, the smallest bubbles you can. What I ended up doing, and as an investment, just save yourself some effort if you're doing an entire van, buy the Great Stuff gun. The cans themselves are a little bit more expensive, but they are, as you can see, huge and larger. As well as this gun gets you great maneuverability into tight spaces. You're not dealing with the plastic straw. This thing, as long as you keep a can connected, and they do make cleaning cans as well, but I'll talk about that in a second. As long as you keep one connected, this thing can hang out for a month or two. And it won't cure in there. You'll end up with little fuzzies at the end, you kind of clear off. And if I pull this trigger, and I haven't used this in a week, it's gonna go. Now in the winter when I'm working out here, I do try to warm it up a bit and shake it, make sure everything's mixed well. Otherwise you won't get a good consistency out of the phone. But this red stuff, hands down, part of the reason I'm going to take out that window trim I talked about in a previous video with the yellow stuff and put this orange stuff in. This is also a fire block, I believe. It won't light on fire, so that's always a plus. Now, this is a little bit of an investment, but I wouldn't use anything else. It's very controllable. You don't get overspray. You don't get more foam that you're gonna have to cut off later. I did use it as an adhesive. However, Great Stuff does have like an adhesive foam you can use, supposedly just to actually glue stuff down. Probably doesn't expand very well, but it will stick to everything. So I probably could have used that. However, I couldn't find that locally. It was basically the red can, the blue can, and the cleaning can. If you do pull this off, make sure you are cleaning it out and putting the cleaning can on and clearing that whole debris out. But saying that, I've done it a couple different times and I've had a few guns lock up on me. So what I do is I just always keep a can. I always have a spare can in the house staying warm. If I run out of a can, I open this up, a little bit of foam squirts out of here. I clean it with the cleaner. I put another can on and it stays good for a long time. An investment, yes, but if you're doing an entire bus, highly recommended getting in all the nooks and crannies and stuff like that. Otherwise, fill with the soft foam like a Havelock foam. The other thing for the panels and to keep these secured, as that foam is trying to expand, you want it to get pressure. these zip walls. I'll put links to all this stuff down to Amazon. Of course, I get a little bit of some off the Amazon links. Otherwise, just use the name and Google it yourself. But I do get a little bit for the channel. Obviously, like a lot of folks on YouTube, everyone has a link for something, don't they? These zip walls, they are not terribly cheap, but I've used them almost since the beginning exclusively. Now, I have a family member that let me borrow a couple of them, and I loved them so much that I got my own. You can get a 4-pack, a 10-pack. Again, maybe you can just pick up single ones if you're patient and you'll need one at a time. But I've used these exclusively to put up all the panels, all the foams. You can push off stuff. These instantly just are twist lock into place. And then this spring here is what's going to keep the tension. And they have a little sticky pad on there that will help stick in weird angles. But you effectively push this on till the spring goes in and line lock that. And they have been amazing. Next step is doing the floor. I'm planning on doing the pink foam, about 1 inch. And then a very thin, probably 5 mil underlayment on top. And that will sandwich this as 3/4 inch marine ply as the floor of this. I will have 1 inch of foam and then another very thin layer just to finish and put some laminate flooring on there. That's my floor insulation. I don't want to get too high because I want to keep my headroom. So again, focus on keeping cracks, keeping the wind, any sort of air escaping out of windows or weird seams. Part of the reason we sealed up this door over here is just because the air was coming in. That's that convection we talked about. Conduction is anything that's going to be metal, touching the outside, touching the inside. Try to reduce that as much as possible. Like I talked about in my build, I didn't do that in all the places because I'm not that worried about it. I'm not going to be up in the Arctic in -40, and if I do, I'm going to have warm clothes and the heater going the entire time with backup heaters and fuel available. So I'm not too worried about that. And other than that, go for a good poly-si if you can board. Anywhere else, Havelock wool. Hey guys, well that's about it. I'm gonna wrap this up. I'm starting to kind of repeat myself a little bit. I'll put a link down below, some of the tools and things that I've used. It's made this job a whole lot easier. Do the best you can. Remember that this is a double-edged sword. In the winter, you're trying to keep the cold out and keep your heat source in like a diesel heater. That video is soon to come. But in the summer or different regions of the country, different times of year, you're also trying to keep the heat out. The summertime, eventually you can put all the insulation you want. It's going to eventually creep through, and if you have that thick insulation, it's going to take a long time for that heat to evacuate your van. So part of the reason I have the giant AC unit, I'll put a link below or up above of that video. So I'm hoping that it will keep and retain the cool air longer. So that's probably why you're seeing kind of a medium level insulation job, because I plan on having a heater and I plan on having AC in the summer. And so you don't want it too much. Do yourself a favor. If you have your ceiling fans, try to put insulation on them, or have coverings. Windows, cover your windows. Those are huge heat losses, but try to focus more on the ceiling. That's trapping all the heat that wants to escape your van to go into the atmosphere. Do a medium job on the walls, and honestly do very little on the bottom. The stuff on the bottom is literally just for that conductive heat coming up from the bottom of the truck. So I babbled on long enough. Guys, this has been my insulation story, what I've done at the Adventure Bus. Hopefully that gives you a good update. Let me know if you guys have any questions, and we'll see you down the road.
Thanks for all the love and support. You guys are amazing. Please like, share, and subscribe. Follow the adventure on social media, and we'll see you on the road.